Got one more clip, and then we're going to wrap things up. Here is Ben Shapiro. I can't even make. You gotta help me with this. I can't even tell where he's going with this thing.
This is a crazy lefty lady who was using all of the trappings and all of the hallmarks of woke culture in order to get ahead and in order to generate sympathy for an agenda that she was pushing. That says something about where the halls of power in America truly lie, does it not? You don't see a lot of people who are seeking power attempting to ape conservatives, like pretend to be a conservative. You don't see that a lot. You don't see a lot of people who want power attempting to be white, right? That's not, you don't have reverse Rachel Dolezals. And that is an indicator of where power lies in a society, right? During Jim Crow, it was a fairly common and horrific thing. I mean, horrifically that anybody felt that they needed to do this, that light-skinned black people would sometimes attempt to pass for white, right? This is a very, very, there have been a number of famous novels on this particular topic because white was power for a lot of American history. Well, now there are not a lot of black people masquerading as white people, but you will see a Rachel Dolezal attempting to be black. And here you will see a professor pretending to be a bisexual Native American woman. The halls of power are replete with the diversity crew. And that is where people are attempting to pander in order to get ahead, which says something about where America stands. It doesn't say that America is deeply intolerant of diversity. It says precisely the opposite, that we are so militantly in favor of diversity that we'll swallow any stupid thing put forth so long as you slap a diversity label on it.
I could someone refresh my mind about the Rachel Dolezal story? What was her attempt into the halls of power? How was she using her identity as a black person to get into the halls of power?
I think she was a co-director of the Western or Eastern Washington NAACP, yeah. And she was an adjunct professor at a community college.
Okay,
so yeah, the August halls of power.
Boom, boom.
Is that mine?
I don't know what that was. Something was really loud there.
I would say there's still more people probably passing as white than are doing Rachel Dolezals in this country, even post Jim Crow. I think, and on a more subtle note, look at the way people Cardi B, they lighten her skin tone in certain things. It's a very common. These sorts of skin color things are very common, and still the preference culturally is towards lighter skin.
They just did it in a congressional race, didn't they? So was it Cori Bush?
Yes, they darkened Cori Bush in a mailer that they were doing. But the idea that this is the way you get into the halls of power, I don't know. I don't know what constitutes the halls of power. I'm if you look at the CEOs, is the way to become a CEO of a major corporation in this country is to portray yourself as an African-American woman? I mean, what is it called? What are the halls of power? Is he talking about some, I don't know, TikTok thing? What is it? What is he talking about?
The Netflix Big Mouth's writer's room is what he's talking about.
Kind of worldview make people where it's if you acknowledge, because there's some acknowledgement in there and that whole confused spiel about how for a long time in this country white was power, right? That's an acknowledgement of something that's been systemic in this country for a long time. But it's but you can't just let that lie. So it's now it's no, I'm going to move the goalpost so that my metric for determining who's oppressed is who's masquerading as who, right? It has nothing to do with systemic policy or anything systemic.
Well, I'd also like to know, where does he mark? If he acknowledges that in this country, that the white meant power, when did that end exactly in Ben in Ben Shapiro's mind? When did that end? Was it the Voting Rights Act? Is that when whites lost all their power in our society? I'm curious what he would say to that. Was it just all of a sudden when, I don't know, the Cialis' commercials, featured a black guy?
Whoa. Wait a second.
I think it
Wait a
ended.
second.
Rachel Dolezal declared martial law.
I mean, guys, Justin Trudeau did wear blackface an awful lot, and he is prime minister.
Boom.
So I don't know. Maybe he has a point.
Checkmate, man.
Jeez, Matt, what do you do? What are you doing? Are you moonlighting over at Tucker Carlson's show too? now?
Yeah, and I've heard that Dolezal is on Biden's shortlist for VP too.
Unbelievable. I mean, I do think that there has been a shift, but I think it's really hard to argue that white people still don't have the dominant power in our society. I mean, it is true that, there is at least a concept that black people have the right to vote in this country. Now, of course, it can be abridged quite easily via, various mechanisms that Republican controlled state governments have been working on. But I'd be really curious as to when, according to Ben Shapiro, the white people lost the power in this country.
Right. Like, if anything, these examples that he's pointing out are, like, to me, they're actually more evidence that white people, in addition to the power and the privilege that they've had, like, historically in the country, they're also using that, they're also managing to find a way to claim some of the benefits we've set up for people who have been historically oppressed. Like, they're also finding a way to kind of get in there, right? Like the Elizabeth Warren example, if anything, is an example of that, right? Of, like, a privileged white woman trying to get, affirmative action benefits on top of what she's already benefited from.
I don't know if she ended up getting those benefits or not, but yes, I understand the dynamic you're talking about.